Glad to see you here on this beautiful fall day in this lovely park that we have. My name is Jemima Parmelee Barnes, and I'm up and about today, which is unusual. And I'm so glad to have a lively conversation with some. All right, I want to tell you about myself and my family. We're in the Barnes, William Barnes plot here. There are other Barneses as well. In fact, you might be interested to know there are Barnes alive and well, descendants of our family. Dr. Brad Barnes and his children and grandchildren who live in this area are part of our family. I was born in Connecticut in 1838. Now that was a time when our country was experiencing a great deal of innovation in industry and great improvements in the way in which we could provide transportation, agriculture, and manufacturing. My husband-to-be, William, born also in Connecticut, as he was growing up, became intrigued with the milling of paper and worked for some years learning the trade in a paper mill in Connecticut. When I ascertained that he had reached a point where he would be able to provide successfully for a family, I consented to marry him. So we were married and spent our early married years in Connecticut, where 4 of our children were born. And we also were experiencing in our country at that time another major unrest, of course. Things were bubbling up, and the North was fighting the South over issues having to do with slavery and emancipation and separation. So it wasn't a comfortable feeling, and William was looking for not only security, but peacefulness and perhaps opportunity. He and his brothers decided that the young state of Michigan would provide such an opportunity. And so in 1863, we moved to Detroit. We did not stay there long, for the brothers found in the small village of Rochester, north of Detroit, on the Clinton River, a mill that had recently been converted to the manufacture of paper. The brothers bought the mill, and it became the Barnes Brothers Paper Mill, and it operated successfully on that site for many years. Prior to it being a paper mill, it was a grist mill owned by Stephen Mack and had provided the service of milling grain for the farmers of the community for many years prior. Let me tell you a little bit more about our family, and then I'll get back a little bit to the paper mill. When we came here, we had 4 children, but eventually we had 10. And as many families of that time, not all of our children lived to adulthood. We have 4 children who died in their early childhood years. That was not uncommon, but of course you can imagine it was a very sad thing for any family to have that happen. The only positive probably is that we supported each other because it happened so often to so many. My other children grew to adulthood. Clayton worked in the mill with his father, and we thought he would take over the milling business when William became of the age of retirement. But Clayton, like many young men, had his own ideas and traveled his own path and went on to form other business establishments, and of which we could be proud. So when William went to retire, the mill was put in the capable hands of his nephew, young William Drace, and it operated for many years. In fact, I understand the mill operated well into the 21st century before it was closed down and demolished. All was not wonderful at the mill. In 1875, 1873 or 1875, I've forgotten which, an employee named Mrs. Ann Strong was rather a strange lady, unhinged is how I would describe her, And Mr. Barnes felt that he had to let her go from employment. So he ceased her contract, and she left very angry and bitter. And one Sabbath morning, when all of the village people were worshiping in their churches, she snuck into the mill and lit a fire. There was no fire department at that time, no fire watchman. And so by the time it was noticed, the building was in a conflagration and burned to the ground. Mrs. Strong was arrested, tried and convicted of arson. She was sent to the Detroit Correctional Institute to serve a 10-year sentence. Well, she didn't serve her sentence. She died within the first year there, but justice had been served. Mr. Barnes and his brothers rebuilt the mill, and probably a blessing in disguise, because it was bigger, it was more productive, and so again, it provided much employment for men in the community and a prosperous living for us and for our family. He built us a house on 3rd Street. It still stands. It's a beautiful house filled with memories, both good and bad, or sad and happy. And I hope you get a chance to walk down the street and take a look. It's 501 West 3rd Street. Well, 2 of our daughters were entrepreneurs and merchants on Main Street. Anna married Samuel Goodison, and together they opened a mercantile and grocery in the old Sprague building. The Sprague building still stands. When it was sold, it was available to them for their business. And you can see it at 2nd and Main Street. It now houses the home bakery. And our other daughter, or another daughter, I should say, Anna married Lemon Hudson, and they opened a grocery. They were somewhat in competition, but good competition, in the beautiful new modern Chrisman building that had just been built at the turn of the century on 5th and Main Street. However, Gertrude was probably the child I like to talk about most because her life was exciting. She went to the University of Michigan as a student, which was a very unusual honor for a young woman at that time. And there she met a law student whose name was Gardner Wilder. They fell in love and were married, and Gardner went on to become Deputy Attorney General in the territory of Hawaii, where he was also a circuit court judge. We were very, very proud of them, even though they were so very, very far away from us. That was the hard part. About the time of the turn of the century, William became ill, and Gertrude came home. William died, and she was here taking care of me and paying respects to her father when a double tragedy occurred, and her husband in Hawaii contracted pneumonia and died there. So it was a very rocky and unhappy start to the century for our family. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to tell you. Oh, in 1873, right before the fire, the Village of Rochester started a newspaper, the Rochester Era. And so it was in the Rochester Era that the fire and the trial and all those sort of things were reported to the community. And of course, paper was useful for many things besides newspapers, printing of books, the wrapping of fish at the grocery store, and so forth. So, and of course, communication, writing letters back and forth. I think that is probably the highlights of everything I wanted to tell you, and I'm thinking that Mr. Woodward is actually getting a little impatient waiting for your company. Come see me again, please.